Hi, Cynthia Allen here. I'm a little tiny bit early. I didn't mean to be early. I didn't mean to be early. So I guess I should kill some time while I'm waiting for some people to maybe join me. Um, but gosh, I'm just on a high, having come off of this three-part live series, Reclaim Your Body, and where we explored how we can activate the power, your own learning body, and the importance of activating the power of your own learning body. And I'm glad to have anybody here that's here. So I know most of you would see this on replay, but if you are here and you are live and you would like to say hi, you want to follow that little um, prompt that says register, so I know who it is. So I'll say like register in Facebook, register in YouTube. It doesn't really require hardly anything, just takes a couple seconds. Then when you say hi or you post a question, I'll know who you are. Otherwise, it'll just say like Facebook user or YouTube user. I won't be able to tell who you are. So yeah, so I wanted to get into this idea of good enough movement. When is good enough movement not good enough? I've had a couple of experiences with this idea of good enough movement in the medical culture. And two that I want to tell you about actually. I was on a plane several years ago flying out to Arizona to teach a Gate for Wild Human Potential workshop. And I was seated next to a physician. And the physician said, what are you doing? How are you going out? I said, I'm going out to teach, a workshop on gait. And he said, to who? And I said, to adults. And he said, well, he literally said this. He said, well, that's ridiculous. Everyone knows how to walk. Now, I got to tell you that I worked with really wonderful and intelligent physicians, but just like all of us, they can say, any of us, we can say incredibly stupid things sometimes, right? And that was one of the doozies that I thought, oh my gosh, I think he has to know better than that. But if he doesn't, oh my gosh, what in the world? Of course, people do not know how to walk well. You and I can sit and watch people walk down the sidewalk. We can watch it in an airport. We can watch anywhere, and we will see there are a lot of people, even without an untrained eye, there's a lot of people that don't know how to walk well. And it's pretty shocking, actually, until you really understand how these things happen. And then another one that happened that's actually still related to walking, almost all of this end up in the end being related to walking, is a woman I was working with who had the beginning of a bunion. It was not super significant, but it was going to be significant as the years wore on. She was probably maybe in her 40s at the time. And she was not seeing me for that. She was seeing me for something else. And I just said to her, if you are inclined to hang around with me a little bit, I'd like to work with you on how you walk, because you're starting to get this bunion thing going on. And I can see how that's going to develop for you over time. And so we started working together with it. And she was so excited when she went in to see her doctor. And she said to her doctor, look, I'm working on this whole thing about walking and preventing this bunion. And the physician said, you can't do anything about that. And you can just stop whatever you're doing. There's no point to it. Just eventually we'll do surgery. Okay. There's so many things wrong with both of these statements. And they're not really a reflection of what's wrong with medicine, because any institution, medicine, armed forces, whatever, they are a reflection of the rest of us and how the rest of us think. So it's important for us to start to break open this idea that we don't have to re-examine movement, that movement is just good enough. I don't have to, now that I'm injured, I'll take a look at it. Oh, now that I can't get around, I'll take a look at it. No, it's not that way. We are privileged. If you're watching this, you're probably privileged to be at a point or a place in your life where you could actually spend the time to watch a video like this. And maybe you came to the 3-part life series and you learned about the Feldenkrais work and the way that I apply it. But you may not still really understand, why would you spend time on it? Why would you spend more time on it? Surely those 3 sessions are enough. So it turns out that by the time we're 7, 8, 9 years old, we've pretty much established most of our movement patterns. And you will certainly see changes as a person's body changes and as they get involved in different kinds of activities, and as their work life unfolds. But the way that we came up to that age of 7, 8, 9 years old actually started to put in the patterns we were mostly going to use for life. And the only reason that those patterns will get interrupted is because of injury or because of some level of demand. Now, the nervous system, we talked a lot about this in the 3-part life series, right? We talked about the nervous system. The nervous system, I said in the 3-part life series, and by the way, you can look in the comments and find the registration. You can still watch the replays for that. Phenomenal feedback on that series. So I highly recommend it. Great movement lessons and great discussion lecture. The nervous system is always answering this question, am I safe? Am I safe? It's also answering, especially in the first formative years of life, it's answering, what can I get this being to in the next developmental step, so that they can acquire the good enough skill to go on to the next developmental step. So they can acquire the good enough skill to go on to the next development step. And this is because we have to acquire the skills of survival. Now, you've seen those videos where an animal is out in the forest or out in the range. Maybe I always like to use like an antelope or a gazelle as an example, and they have their young, and then within a few minutes, it's like less than 30 that's standing. It's standing. I mean, it's standing. And then it's starting to learn to suckle. And then within a matter of hours, it's starting to walk. Wow. It's nothing like that for human beings, is it? Human beings are really more like embryos when they're born. We're still a little like the Joey that gets put in the pocket and carried around by the mama, right? We still have to have a pocket. We have to have a set of arms. We have to have care in order for us to continue to develop along the lines, so that we can acquire the skills of reaching, of rolling over, of pushing up, of getting on a hand and knee, of starting to scoot, of starting to get ready to sit, of getting up to crawl, all those things, walking along a piece of furniture, and then starting to walk independently. And we see, as the child is acquiring these skills, there's all this wobbling us, and there's this falling and then coming back up. And this, of course, is if the child is, I don't want to say lucky, but we could say it's lucky. They had a relatively good home environment, and they had a trauma-free birth, and they have a set of genes that is really working to their advantage. And then you can see quickly how they learn these things, and then you think, oh gosh, they're starting to really get good at that rolling over. They're starting to really get good at that rolling over, and then all at once they're on to a new skill. And oh wow, look at that. They're starting to really get good at holding their head up and pushing their head and pushing their pelvis forward and finding the ground. Oh, look at that. They can arch. They can arch. Wow, that's pretty cool. And then they go to the next skill. And they just keep acquiring their skills this way. And there's something inside each of us, what's inside of us, that says, it's good enough there. That's good enough. I'm going to go on to the next skill. And the drive is to get us ready for survival. The time limit is running out when we're going to have to be able to run in order to get food, run to escape from being food, run in order to be able to fight right? Flight, freeze, run in order to be able to find a mate or to choose not to have that particular mate. So the four F's, as they're called, are deeply ingrained in our beingness, as if we were going to have to survive on our own. And so we don't ever have the opportunity to look at improving movement in most of our life. Certainly isn't something that comes up in physical education, even if physical education happens. By the way, you can leave comments and ask questions here. I know I can see a few people are watching. Feel free to do that. So now, when we sign up and we take on a sport, especially as you start to go into higher levels of the sport, you start to become professional sports. Now you have people dedicated to helping these people perfect their movement. And still, we know that things happen. We take someone like Tiger Woods, who a phenomenal golfer, but his walking not so good, and his knees and his back. Oh, not everybody has those knees and back problems that golfs. Hmm. Hmm. So it means, from my perspective as a somatic educator, as a movement educator, it means that there is unclaimed possibilities that we can be engaging in. Not because we're looking for perfection, because that is a life killer. So we're not trying to look for perfection, but we are trying to give ourselves the best chance, I would say the best leg up, that we will age well. Now, I already talked about the fact that I was somebody who didn't have good movement. I had struggled with my movement. I really couldn't run well. I had a lot of pain in my knees and in my hips as a child, significant pain. So I didn't have the same set of genes as somebody who just like seems like they were really athletically oriented, and man, they could hit that ball and run the bases, or they could dribble that, dribble it down the court. Or we didn't have football where I was growing up. I know that sounds sacrilegious, but we didn't have football in my school, really. It started to show up as I was leaving. um, but it means that it's even more important perhaps for me, right? Because I really didn't have that full playing deck that maybe some other people had. So it's even more important for me. If you're somebody that relates, maybe you've had injuries early in life that interrupted your development. Maybe you had sports injuries, and so things have not been the same since then. We sprain our ankle and we think, oh, well, I'm okay. But then we sprain the ankle again, and then we sprain the ankle again. And we can say that that's only because of strength, but I don't think it's only because of strength. I think it's also because of our movement patterns. Now, by the time somebody gets into their 70s, 80s, you'll hear them say things. You say, how are you doing? They'll say, I'm getting around. Yeah, I'm getting around. And that means they're doing okay. They've accepted their lot, but mobility has gotten harder. Things are not as easy. So it doesn't matter what stage you're at, but I think it's worth taking a really big pause and ask ourselves, are we settling? Are we settling for just good enough movement? Because as we do that settling, it's going to settle a little bit more, and then you're going to have to settle a little bit more, and then you're going to have to settle a little bit more, because that's just the way life is. That is the way of the life of an organic being. The years accumulate, and the stages of development start to shift to being about the emotional, psychological, spiritual life, and less about the physical life. But we want to keep our physical lives feeding our emotional, spiritual lives. And it's not simply about exercise. I'm not saying that's not important, but it's not enough. It's not enough for most people. Most people are going to need to work to improve their fundamental movement patterns. So I think you can do it. I think we can do it. I feel like I'm doing it. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to have injuries or difficulties, but then I've already got a tool set to keep drawing on and coming back and using again to help myself come to whatever my next level of possibility is. Don't want to settle. I don't want to settle. And I hope you don't want to settle for the good enough movement, which is basically just written into our genes. It's written into our, not genes, it's written into our developmental pattern. It's written into the basic survival instinct. And in a culture where we definitely don't have a lot of reasons to become more agile, more undulating with the rhythms of life and the sounds and the music and the animal world. We don't have these kinds of things to help stimulate us. We have to have other ways of coming into ourselves and perpetuating movement that moves us beyond just the good enough place into a place where we can feel some pleasure. We feel a decrease in chronic pain. We feel an increase in energy. We feel a blossoming of rhythm and ease and undulation. And it's just like as if everything in us works a little bit better, no matter who we are. We're looking for not perfection, because I haven't got it. I got issues. I for sure have issues just like you do. But we're looking for that tool set that lets us come back to a feeling of restoration, the reclaiming of your body and the inhabitants of it. So when is good enough movement not good enough? It starts to become really obvious if you start to go beyond the fourth decade, really. The fourth decade, that's when it starts to become obvious for most people. They start to say, oh, I don't really want to get up and down this much. Oh, I can't go on a run the way I used to. Hurts my heel, hurts my foot. Oh, I can't do X. Yard work is starting to become a little less fun. Pickleball. Oh, I got injured. Pickleball was going great. Now I've got an injury. These are all indications that we should not settle for good enough movement. Okay, leave a comment. I hope you leave a comment in the video. When you leave comments, it helps other people see it. It also helps me know I'm not alone. Of course, you can just say, I thought this was boring. It's still a comment, and it's still feedback. But maybe you actually found it interesting, or you have something you'd like to add to it or disagree with. I'd like to hear about it. And I'm going to do another one tomorrow. Haven't decided the topic yet, but you could influence that with your questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.